All right, let's talk about forms. If you've ever built a web app, you know they're absolutely central to everything we do. But let's be honest, they can also be a huge headache to manage. Well, today we're diving into how Angular is completely changing the game with its new signal-based approach. We're going to break down the three core philosophies, see them in action, and figure out which one is the perfect fit for you.
So here's our game plan. First up, we'll get our heads around the three big picture philosophies for building forms in Angular. Then, to make it all real, we'll build the same exact login form three different ways. After that, we'll put the new kid on the block, Signal Forms, under the microscope. And we'll wrap it all up with the most important part, helping you decide which approach you should actually use on your next project.
Okay, let's start at 30,000 feet. You see, Angular doesn't just give you one tool for this job. It gives you three completely different ways to think about forms. You've got the brand new experimental Signal Forms, the super powerful and stable Reactive Forms, and the classic straightforward template-driven forms. Each one has its own unique take on how to handle data, state, and validation. Now, this table right here, this is basically our cheat sheet for this whole explainer. Let's focus on that top row, source of truth. This one line, it changes everything. With Signal Forms, your data model is a signal. With Reactive Forms, these special form control objects hold all the state internally. And with template-driven, you're binding right to properties on your component. This one decision completely dictates how you'll handle things like type safety and validation. Keep this table in mind, we'll be coming back to it. Look, theory is one thing, but seeing the code? That's where it all clicks. So to really get a feel for these different approaches, we're going to build a simple login form using all three methods. Seeing them side by side is going to make the differences pop. Let's start with the logic in the component file. On the left, with Signal Forms, notice how we start with the data, just a simple signal that holds our email and password. The form is then created based on that model. Now look to the right. With Reactive Forms, it's kind of the other way around. We explicitly build the structure of the form first, using form group and form control, and we define validators right there. It's a subtle shift in thinking. Does your data define your form, or does your form define your data structure? And then you jump into the template, and wow, the difference is night and day. Signal Forms on the left use the super clean field directive. It's a direct link between the input and a piece of your form model. Simple. Reactive Forms, on the other hand, have a bit more ceremony. You have to wrap the whole thing in a form tag with the form group directive, and then you use form control name to connect each specific input. Both work, but you can really see the different philosophies shining through in the syntax.
And of course, we can't forget about template-driven forms. Just look at this. Almost everything happens right here in the HTML. That little ng model bit, the banana in a box, creates a two-way binding directly to a property in your component. And validation? You just add an attribute like required. It's incredibly fast for simple things because there's barely any TypeScript code to write. So if you take one thing away from this comparison, it should be this. Where is the actual source of truth? In Signal Forms, your data model, that writable signal, is the boss. The form is just a reactive reflection of your data. But in Reactive Forms, the form control and form group objects are the source of truth. They are their own little state machines, totally separate from any other data model you might have. This is the single biggest difference between the two modern approaches. Okay, now that we have a feel for all three, let's put the new kid on the block under the microscope. We're going to do a deep dive into Signal Forms, because this isn't just some new syntax, it's a fundamental rethinking of how forms work, built from the ground up on Angular's new reactive core, Signals. But first, before we go any further, a really important disclaimer. As of Angular version 21, Signal Forms are officially experimental. This is a big one. It means the API is not set in stone and could change before it's considered stable. So you definitely need to understand that risk before you decide to use this in a production app. So, what's the big idea behind Signal Forms? It all comes down to this thing called the form model. We've seen it already. It's just a writable signal that holds your data. Think of it as a reactive box for your information. What makes this so powerful is that it centralizes everything. When the data in the model changes, the form just knows. And when the user types in the form, the model updates automatically. It's a perfect, predictable, two-way street. So how does validation work in this new world? It's actually pretty elegant. First, you define all your rules in one central place, called a schema. Then, a user types into an input field. The moment they do, the rules for that field just fire off automatically. And then, this is the magic part.
Special state signals like invalid click or errors click instantly update. You don't have to check for anything. Your UI can just react to the new state.
And this all leads to a really important guiding principle. This is a key piece of advice for this new pattern. Don't implement validation logic in your control. Define validation rules in the form schema. What this means is you get this beautiful separation of concerns. Your UI components only have to worry about showing stuff, like an error message, not figuring out if there's an error. All that logic lives together in one place, which makes it way easier to manage.
So how does the UI actually know what to show? Well, that's where these state signals come in. They're like a live dashboard for every single field in your form. You want to know the current value? There's a signal for that. Need to check if it's valid? Signal. Has the user even touched the field yet? Yep, there's a signal for that too. It gives you this incredibly fine-grained, real-time view into everything happening inside your form. All right, that was a lot to take in. We've seen the philosophies, the code, the inner workings, which brings us to the million-dollar question. Which one of these should you actually use? Let's break it down with some clear, actionable advice. Okay, so you should be looking at signal forms if you're living on the cutting edge. If you're starting a brand new app on Angular 21 or later, and your team is all in on signals. The way type safety just flows from your data model is a massive win, and that central validation schema is super clean. But, and this is a big one, you have to be comfortable with that experimental label for now. But let's be real, reactive forms are still the king of the castle for a reason. If you need something that is absolutely rock solid and production ready today, this is it. They're incredibly powerful, especially for really complex, dynamic forms where you might need to add or remove fields on the fly. And if your team already speaks fluent RxJS, reactive forms will feel like home. And hey, let's not forget the original. Sometimes simple is just better. Template-driven forms are perfect for the easy stuff. A search bar, a newsletter sign-up, a basic login form. If you're just banging out a prototype and don't want to get bogged down in component code, ngModel is still your best friend. Its greatest strength is its simplicity. So there you have it, a full tour of Angular's 3 form philosophies, from the simple, template-based approach to the powerful, observable-driven world of reactive forms, all the way to the type-safe future of signal forms. The key takeaway is that you now have the right tool for any job. So the real question isn't just what you'll build next, but how you'll build it. Are you sticking with the battle-tested power of reactive, or are you ready to jump into the signal-powered future?